So I know most discussion at the moment is to do with Icebrood, the upcoming Living World saga that's going to take us back to the Far Shiver Peaks and the Blood Legion homelands and all that. But in addition to that, over on the forums, the devs did drop a little bit of news to do with the balance with the game. So what I'm going to run through here is the devs are looking for balance feedback. It's not a preview of a full upcoming balance post. It's not, you know, a post itself, but they have some tentative ideas they want to hear from the community. I thought it'd be kind of fun to do a video about this, since I do have opinions in this area. But also, as I talk about it, we can have a platform for feedback. You guys can leave comments down there and see what we think. You can go to the forum thread, which I'll leave a link to for you guys. And so this is mostly competitively minded. So it's World versus World, which obviously I know a little bit less about. But then it's also PvP, which I can definitely comment on various balance considerations. So let's run in. They're going to open up with Engineer. And for everyone who feels a bit out of the loop, don't worry. In the footage, I'm going to go through every skill and trait that they're looking at and give you guys the full story. So let's run on in. Here's the post. It's from ArenaNet. Greetings, fellow Tyrians. We've been thinking about implementing the following changes and wanted to share them with you to hear your thoughts and feedback. We're aiming to bring into line some of the more dominant builds and compositions of current World versus World meta so that new options can be brought to the table. So the bulk of the changes here are World versus World centric. It's not a full list of changes that are being considered for the next balance update. This is not a call for general profession feedback. Here are a few questions to think about when you look over the changes. Would your gameplay change as a result? Do you feel these changes would improve or worsen the state of the game? Are you looking forward to these changes? What are your concerns with the set of changes? What consequences do you expect would come from these changes? And with those types of questions, here we go. So Engineer, they're looking at the chemical field. So this is a tool belt ability, and I'll show it to you guys. So when we equip the Purge Gyro, which is all about condition cleanse, we get a tool belt. I actually did my Scrapper video very recently. I talked about this being a really boring skill. Check it out. We activate it. It basically just puts a poison field down. It's essentially a copy-paste of what we already have on the mortar kit, which puts a poison field down. So the flavor idea of chemical field is cool. It's like you've got the Purge Gyro, which is absorbing conditions, absorbing conditions, absorbing conditions, and then you can kind of release the gunk out. I think that's the flavor idea. But it's just a 4-pulse poison field. There's nothing really fun going on there. However, they do say here, chemical field, it's going to be replaced by detection pulse from the old sneak gyro elite tool belt as this tool belt skill for Purge Gyro. So, the detection pulse you used to get as an F5 when you equipped the stealth gyro, but now you're always going to be on function gyro. I think this is a really good change. It's obviously listed, and they're thinking about World versus World here because it's reveal. And reveal, they kind of go crazy within World versus World, and they add as much as they can so that you can counter heavy stealth-oriented stuff. The Purge Gyro is something engineers are already running a lot of in World vs. World and in PvP because of its insane ability to deal with conditions. So it would immediately impact both of those formats and add more reveal to those formats. But I think it'll be a strong change just because I think that the Detection Pulse is a more interesting skill flavor-wise. But then this does go on because the next note here is the Purge Gyro itself, they're looking to nerf. So currently, when we activate Purge Gyro, it will pulse 5 times over 5 seconds, as well as being a light field we can blast, right, for Light Aura, which is anti-Condi as well. So you remove 5 conditions, you flip 5 conditions if you're on Purity of Purpose or whatnot, while the nerf would seek to reduce that to 3. I think it would still be a 5-second duration, based on what they're saying. So you still get the same amount of time to blast and stuff, but you drop to 3 conditions over however many targets, so like a 15 of max. That is significant. I think both changes, basically, you're looking at a buff for World versus World, and then, you know, against Veils or whatever, I guess, and then, you know, while roaming. And then you're looking at a nerf on the Purge Gyro. I actually think these are very good. I think Purge Gyro is super strong. It will knock Scrapper down again if they do this change for PvP. Ever since the Vitality hit, you do see less Scrappers around, but I think it is extremely good at resustaining. It's very good at countering Condi. I think even knocking 2 conditions off of this, though, the Purge Gyro is pretty good. A lot of people will compete Purge Gyro with, say, Elixir Gun, which also gets a bit of cleanse on the 5, but then you also get the light field and you get heals and stuff. And, you know, you get a stun break on the Elixir Gun. So you might see less Purge Gyros around. But for World vs. World, I think that would be a big change. My understanding of World vs. World right now, and feel free to correct me in the comments, but is there's not much of a Condi meta going on right now. Like, you run Power Scourge and stuff in there, right? There's just so many really powerful cleanse mechanics in World vs. World, like the Sigil of Cleansing and stuff. that I think that what the devs are hoping to do is actually reinvigorate a little bit of the Condi stuff by knocking down some of the cleanse application, right? And, you know, one of the big culprits on Engineer they're not actually talking about here, especially for World vs. World, is their medkit. If you guys haven't paid attention to medkits since updated, the skill 3, it's a cleansing field. It's basically like a purge gyro. It doesn't move, but this cleanses while you're in it. This is huge. This is massive. And the devs aren't even looking at that one. They're just looking at the purge gyro change. Anyway, finally, the sneak gyro. They're increasing the cooldown from 45 to 75. I think that's good. I think that's solid. I agree with Leets on long cooldowns. The only thing I would say about that is why only World vs. World? Maybe in PvP, we already have enough reasons to stay on Mortar, so it's kind of, you know, it would be an unnecessary nerf. But I don't think, you know, if they can keep it unified as much as possible, don't split unless you absolutely have to, being the rule. I would probably just bump it up in PvP as well. But that's just me. Moving on, we have Guardian is next on the list, and we'll see what the devs say. First of all is the skill Sanctuary. So hopefully Guardians know about Sanctuary at this point. Classic Guild Wars Guardian skill. Is actually not that strong, I think, in a lot of situations. It's a consecration. We drop it down, ground targeted, create a bubble. The bubble is going to block missiles that go into it, and anyone who walks into it will get CC'd back. It's pretty huge. Also heals while you're in the inside of it. I think that was one of the newer-ish changes to it. I mean, it's going back a little bit here. But there you'll see it says number of impacts 10. If we go to the change, it says increase the number of enemies that can be knocked back by this skill from 10 to 20 before it expires. So this one's actually a buff. Now, they are saying that they're trying to bring down some more dominant builds in World vs. World. So what is the dominant build that they think a Sanctuary buff would be countering in some way? I'm not entirely sure, but it means that Sanctuary would be more valuable at choke points versus large Zergs and so on. And, yeah, doubling up to 20 targets. I don't see what could be really oppressive and terrible about this. I like this skill. And, you know, giving it a bit more of a place could be kind of nice. I'm not sure if anyone runs it at all right now, so buffing it seems, you know, fairly okay. That's what I think on that one. Then we have some Firebrand stuff, okay? First of all, the F2 tome. So we're looking at Chapter 2, Radiant Recovery. So let me just run you guys through what exactly this does here. We're in the Heal tome, obviously, Chapter 2. This one's the one we do the little swell. And this is a cleanse, okay? When Path of Fire came out, if you remember, this was nuts. It did so much stuff. It's actually still unnerfed in PvE, which is what you're looking at right now with the 3 conditions and stuff. But for every condition you cleanse, it also heals a significant amount on the back of it. Well, so here they're saying the existing split from PvP of cleansing just 2 conditions is going to World vs. World as well. And then also it would stay at 3 in PvE. I think that's fine. This actually, I was playing a lot of Firebrand when that nerf came in PvP, and it felt really significant. Remember, you're double dipping. If they hit the amount of conditions it can cleanse, they also hit the heals that come off of the conditions you cleanse on the back of it. So again, that's just like with the Purge Gyro change. It's just looking a bit of Condi. Then we look at F3. Okay, we're looking at Chapter 2 of F3, and we're looking at Chapter 5 of F3. So we go into F3. So Chapter 2 is Daring Challenge. So this is the little, you pulse this ring out, right? And what that does is if that hits someone, it does damage. And pretty good damage. It's very high on my build in PvE right now. Good damage. But if you actually hit someone with it, it taunts and Aegises you. I think it only actually refreshes that Aegis if it hits, by the way. You don't get Aegis unless you actually make sure to proc it. And Aegis is obviously pretty strong. And then 5, this is like the epic skill, okay? Super high, unrippable toughness, 300 toughness for your allies. Aegis, protection, which is even more damage mitigation, retaliation, and stability. Look at that. That's like every boon you would seriously associate with Guardian all at once. All of them. Maybe resist you would add in there a little bit. It depends how raid-minded you are, though. Obviously, we have resist on the 4. So anyway, those are the skills we're looking at. Here's the nerfs they're looking at for World vs. World. First of all, Daring Challenge no longer gives Aegis at all. Instead, it gives Retail. For this change, I'm not really sure how much that means. I don't realize that the Aegis block spam was such a major thing. When it comes to World vs. World, Retaliation is, like, huge. But it's also pretty abundant already. So maybe, you know, what they're doing is if they swap the Aegis for Retaliation, it's kind of like they're swapping the Aegis for nothing. Because there's already so much retaliation around, if that makes sense, right? You're already pulsing a lot of retail out. So it's kind of a sneaky thing. It's like a way of, in World vs. World, which is what they're looking at, it's a way of kind of removing it. I feel like that would feel kind of bad in some other formats, though. And I definitely do think the skill would be weaker as soon as that happens. Also, are we only going to be in a situation where we get retaliation if we successfully land the taunt. I like the flavor of it, right? The idea that we daring challenge, we taunt them in, so they have to attack, so they have to take retail damage. Like, as far as the skill exists encapsulated as its own little thing, it would make more sense as retail. With Aegis, it's like, oh, give yourself this defensive tool, but also force someone to strike into it. Now it's give yourself this offensive, like, damage thing. You're going to get, like, it tries to get value out of itself, if that makes sense. So I think it's okay. I don't see it as a game changer, though. And then finally with the 5, they would be removing the retaliation and the Aegis here. Now we're talking, okay? So getting rid of Aegis on the 5 is really big, because this is a 600 radius, okay? Look at this ring. See this blue ring? That's huge. You can catch a lot of your Zerging allies with you there. And that, I think, will diminish block spam. I think that good firebrands, basically, they go 5-2-5 kind of thing. It's similar to how in Heal Tome, if you're against a lot of Condi pressure, going 2-5-2 is good. And then against power pressure, the Aegis spam of the 2-5-2 again, but in a different time. So I think that's what they're looking at. You'll also notice that if they get rid of retail on the 5, but give it on the 2... then the kit, the F3, still has retail there. It's just you get it a little bit differently. So the way I think ArenaNet are looking at these two changes is that they would be coming in together. And I'd be for them. I think they would be alright. And once again, be another little thing that just clicks Firebrand down a tiny little bit. Again, even though they might be somewhat world versus world minded, I am thinking about the other game types here. Alright? And that would be a nerf. It would be a significant nerf, actually. Not the ultimate nerf. I mean, it still has Mercy Signet and stuff for PvP, so whatever. But it would be a good nerf. So we have Mesmer next. And there's a change immediately on this list that I feel somewhat responsible for. Check it out. Mesmer, Illusion of Life. Increase the cooldown of this skill from 75 seconds to 90 seconds in PvP and World vs. World. And reduce the duration from 15 to 8 of its effect in World vs. World and PvP. So, I actually have been queuing with Illusion of Life a lot lately. I think it's an extremely strong skill that most players have been too out of touch to realize. They think they have a sense of the pace of the game, and they don't realize it's much faster, which changes the kind of skills that are good. Illusion of Life thrives. With everything so bursty, you revive someone very quickly. They only get 15 seconds alive again. You can ground target it. You can even do it AoE. But the game is so quick, especially on the PvP side, that they will score a counter kill. They will counter rally. If it's any kind of a close 2v2 or something, you can swing it in your favor with this. It's very strong. I identified that it would be very strong under current metas, and I've been doing well with it. I enjoy it. It's a skill, though, that feels very cheesy to be on the other end of. You can feel like you fairly won a 2v2 only for Illusion of Life to come out and swing it. And I do actually think it's a bad skill for the game. I think it does feel quite awful, and there's a lot of mechanics like this that I don't like very much. The way I would nerf this is, personally, I would add more of a cast time to it. That's all. I'd add an animation, an actual animation. This just, you know, this has an animation of the pulse on the ground, but there's no signifier that this is the spell I'm casting until the spell goes off. I would add some kind of telegraph above my head, maybe the skill icon, you know, just like you would get with a signet or something, and I'd give it a bit more of a cast time so that people can interrupt. That's fun stuff. Interrupting powerful skills, that's big. I think that's big in PvP. I think that's big in World vs. World, and I'll leave it there. The proposed nerf is changing the duration from 15 to 8 seconds. Well, I still think maybe Mesmers could get some value out of it there, but a lot less. And what is currently an interest, as cheesy as the skill feels, I think it's an interesting interaction. So I don't actually think that's the best way to nerf it. If they didn't want to do the cast time thing, I would actually have this skill revive someone at 50% health. Not have them come back at 100% health, but have them a little bit more vulnerable so that, you know, the counter kill can go through. So here's the thing with Illusion of Life. If you just DPS the player who is temporarily alive, they'll die. They'll skip down state and completely die. That's it. It's completely over. So I would look at options of counterplay rather than just messing with the cooldown on this one or the duration or whatever. I guess, you know, just trying to outweigh it is fun-ish. But no. I think that dropping the health of the Resurrect player is good. There's another side effect to this skill in that when you res someone, they're invulnerable for a little while. They're immune to conditions and stuff that might have been applied to them while they were in the down state, while they were getting cleaved. I think that's really bad. They should remove the invulnerability and have the player that gets res start on low health or start on no endurance or something like that. That's the way that I would nerf that. I think that would be a more interesting game, and put a cast time on it too if you like. But 8 seconds, maybe you can't get enough done. Even just on paper, it feels like it's going to be too short, and you're going to kill the skill completely. I think the devs might be looking at the fact that you can get AoE value out of this, And, you know, it's super insane if you get it AoE. But that happens less significantly than you'd expect, specifically when it comes to, like, ranked and just random moments. When it comes to World vs. World, are people running this? I would imagine it would be epic in World vs. World, because people die in clumps. They die next to each other, so you get AoE value, and then they're, like, invuln to the cleave that's coming down and all that stuff. It sounds like it would be great, but I'm not much into Zerg theory crafting in World vs. World. I don't know what the community ended up settling on there. My instinct is it's good. But yeah, so there you go. That's what I think about Illusion of Life. I do agree with the idea of nerfing it. I really do. But I'm not sure that they've done that in the healthiest, most fun way. Next are two really cool changes to do with Power Break, which is on the Mantra of Pain, and Power Lock, which is on the Mantra of Distraction. So let's check out these two mantras. Let's remind ourselves what mantras are. They are spells that take a long time to cast. You, like, prepare them. And now that they're prepared, they become instant activation spells that you can just throw out. So with no cast time, in the middle of anything else, I can just spam Mantra of Destruction there. I cast it, and if I had a target, you would have seen an animation. So this one's just a free interrupt at any point from range, in 1200 range around you. And then this one is damage. And then they slowly charge back up. You can wait for them to charge again and spend it, or you can cast both of them, and then you have to rechannel. The Mantra of Pain is special in that it has no cooldown at all, so you can just keep spamming. On the initial cast, they tend to give you an effect, so Mantra of Pain is 12 might. So a great way to play Mantra of Pain is to be really spammy with it. Like I'm doing here, I'm sustaining 12 might on myself with no concentration, just rolling on through, doing damage, no animation, no counterplay potential. So they're fun skills as far as PvE is concerned, I guess, in terms of, you know, just like the idea of them. But when you put them into PvP scenarios, animationless, almost uncounterable things, they feel weird. Obviously, the counter to these is interrupting the rechannel. But when you can precast and stuff, they're just in a weird place, and they don't feel very good. These are actually some of my least favorite skills in the... Actually, Power Spike, I don't like much. But Power Lock, I actually think is pretty cool. Especially the way that it works with trait interactions and watching for someone to use their heal skill. You see that telltale blue glow, and then you go for the interrupt. It's actually some of the most fun Mesmer gameplay to me. But yeah, so anyway, their proposed nerfs are these. That the skill now requires you to face your target and respect line of sight for the Mantra of Pain, and that the skill now requires you to face your target and respect line of sight. So there still won't be animations. But what this means is if I'm like a glassy Mesmer, which you often will be on these, if I'm getting super pressured and I'm running away, I could just have my target on this citizen, and as I'm running away at full speed, no animation, no cost to me, while in the middle of my heal skill, I can kill him just by spamming this button. Just spam. He's behind that pillar, it doesn't matter. Spam. To tell you the truth, I thought this already did respect line of sight. It's insane to me that these skills don't respect line of sight. That nerf absolutely should come through. It doesn't matter what format you're looking in the game. They should respect line of sight. Nearly everything in Guild Wars 2 should respect line of sight. And having to actually face people, I think is good. On paper, it sounds good. It might be really clunky to use in practice, but I think a knock against these skills is perfectly worthwhile. It just adds a little bit of skill. And now, like, if the Mesmer's running around, I see him about face, I can dodge roll, because I know a Mantra might be coming, for example, or whatever. It just brings the game into that more visual space that it should be, and Mantras have stood in defiance of. So I actually love that change. I think it's really good. Next, we have Chaos Storm. So this is skill 5 on your staff. Chaos Storm is a Guild Wars 1 skill. Oh, I already have staff equipped. Returning is the skill 5. It creates this big area, ground target, very low cooldown, long duration on it. And if I mouse over this tooltip, you'll see it does a ton of stuff. It pulses damage in the area. If I'm in it, it will give me Aegis, Retail, or Swiftness every tick, RNG. If an enemy's in it, it will give Chill, Poison, or Weakness, RNG. And pay attention to the chill and the poison there. Those are conditions that Mesmer otherwise doesn't get good access to. Okay, so it really rounds Mesmer out in a big way. And then also it has a chance to daze as well at the same time on each pulse. So here's the thing. The daze is like this big RNG element that sometimes can be a playmaker, right? Sometimes that will interrupt a resurrect or a stomp, or it will do something big with an enemy firebrand mantra in a World vs. World Zerg, I guess. I don't know. But especially with PvP, Chaos Storm's super strong. And the devs did a global update across the professions a while ago, which meant that the full damage traits also procced on heal skill. For Mesmer, that meant Chaos Storm. So you can actually double Chaos Storm as a Mesmer now, and you have been able to for ages. And when you have 2 Chaos Storms on top of yourself, you're guaranteed to get all 3 boons. You're pretty much guaranteed to get all 3 conditions, and the daze pulses will go really heavy. So I actually think it's the on-heal stuff that devs need to look at. It broke a lot of stuff on the classes, but this is a big part of the power creep, the double Chaos Storm. They do have a change here, though, and this is what they say. That the skill now always dazes, but on the first strike, it can no longer randomly daze on other strikes. It also applies to the lesser Chaos Storm, which is what I was looking at a second ago, and then they added the skill fact to show the Chaos Storm's duration. So I agree with changing Chaos Storm, and I actually like this change as well. I'm pretty positive to a lot of this stuff. The reason for this is because I nearly always try and Chaos Storm to get an interrupt, and if it doesn't go through, well, I feel kind of bad because I feel like I got RNG screwed. You don't want major stuff like that based on RNG. So knowing that that interrupt will come down, I think that it'll make Mesmer feel a little bit less spammy. And it will, you know, I can now daze that. But here's the thing. It might be too strong. Okay, so I like the idea in terms of, like, flow of gameplay. But it might be too strong because now it's like I can guarantee daze, like, almost on command with my heal skill. Like, what if I run the mantra heal? Right? And I'm going to prep it, and it will drop probably here. Oh, no, it doesn't even drop on the prep. But, you know, I can instant activation daze now with this. That might be... but the thing is, nobody really runs the mantra, so it's kind of actually a reason to pick up mantra now that might be fun. Combo it with adventurer runes or something. So, you know, for extra evades while you're on a mirage or something. So I actually... I kind of like it, but it might be a little bit too strong. That unpredictability is not necessarily healthy, but it also kind of holds it at bay. I want to see the devs change Descent into Madness. I want to see changes with stuff like lesser muddy terrain and things on other classes. But maybe that's a topic for later. So anyway, it's an interesting change. Finally, as well, we have Chaotic Interruption coming back. This is their proposal for this. That the trait has been reworked and now reduces the cooldown of one of your weapon ability skills by 5 seconds when you interrupt a foe. So I think this is rubbish, to be honest. So right now, it's disabled. Oh... That's weird. Oh, I guess it's only disabled in PvP, right? I think this is rubbish, all right? You look at the cooldown levels for Mesmer at the moment. Most of them are pretty short. Most of it's designed that you get most of them back every weapon swap. That you're throwing random dazes or interrupts out now, and you might get something back a bit quicker. So now you're choosing to linger on that weapon swap. Like, you're gonna... it just doesn't make too much sense to me. I'm not sure... And besides, it's random as well. So it's 5 seconds on a random single weapon skill. They're scared not to do utilities, and I think that's right. I think it's a lame Grandmaster. I'm not very enticed or excited about it. You know, maybe there's a dueling concept where you're like a dueling chaos guy, and you're taking the pistol trait, and you're taking Chaotic Interruption, so you're just getting massive pistol cooldowns. But I don't think I like it. I think it's flavorless. I think it doesn't sound very strong. I think it doesn't sound very distinct. I don't think it really lines up with Chaos very well. I mean, Chaos is like RNG line. That's kind of the thing. RNG is baked into this. But I don't know. And then also, against the other traits, I'm just not seeing it, ArenaNet. I don't really like that one. That said, I don't have any great suggestions for a follow-up, I must admit. So next we have Necromancer. And obviously this is going to be very important, especially for the World versus World format, and PvP too to an extent. So Feast of Corruption is the first one. So this is going to be your Scepter 3. You're going to whack it out there, single target, or corrupt boons. It applies Torment, gives you Life Force. Very, very, very strong skill. It used to be really weak when it was like a hybrid thing, but in the years since, it's just got better and better and better. So this is a staple of being on a Scepter, to be honest. Here's what ArenaNet are suggesting, that they reduce the flat damage by 20%, and then the existing split on PvP, where it's only 2 boons, gets brought to World versus World. The ability continues to corrupt 3. I'm not sure what a 20% flat damage change will do. For PvP, a lot of us actually run Sage, which is power stacked. So, you know, you do kind of bite into them with flat damage. And, you know, it's okay there. But I don't know. That seems like a non-change to me, the 20%. As for the lesser boon corrupt, well, I think it's still an extremely potent boon removal skill in PvP. I use this as a boon removal skill all the time. Whenever I see stability or high stacks of might, I always go for those corrupts. And they always seem to land. You know, I don't know what the table is on it, but it feels really good. And that's ultimately what's important. So refining that seems okay. It also, however, seems a little bit at odds with the whole Purge Gyro nerf and F2 nerfs from Firebrand. So I don't know what the devs are thinking there or whatever, but yeah. The other thing is, by the way, you can trait this, and I'm guessing their next change here. Let's have a look. Yeah, Devouring Darkness. You can trait it to be bigger and AoE, and they're making the same change there, like I say. So for World vs. World, that's especially relevant, right? So if we pick up Curses, and we take Lingering Curse, we get this new one. It's Devouring Darkness. And now, 3 conditions on 5 potential targets, well, we're looking at a lot now. Now we're looking at 15 conditions. So the upper end changes a lot from a potential of 15 pre-patch down to just 10 post-patch, right? That's a 33% reduction, obviously. So that might be more relevant for World versus World in that case. And then again, like, what are they trying to say about what they want with the balance of Condi? Next, we have Scourge stuff and Sand Cascade. So this is your F3 while you're a Scourge, right? This is your barrier application, right? So we can pulse barrier out at our targets with Greater Sand Savant and ourself, right? So a nice bit of barrier. That's all it does. And then obviously whenever you press this button, it's going to refresh the manifest, right? So whatever manifest is traded to do at the time, it will also pulse that out at the same time. But, you know, it's just a barrier applicator for you and your allies. Well, here they're saying they just want to reduce the barrier by 33% in World versus World and PvP. So for this, as far as PvP is concerned, I think this would actually be one of the more significant nerfs because Blood Scourge is like one of the hardest carry potential builds in the game. You actually have to play when you get to a higher rating, you have to play very carefully and very precisely with your positioning. But if you do it, you can win like a crap ton of 1v1s. You can blow people up AoE, and you have immense support capability with transfusion and reses and stuff. So this skill is like a staple of that build, that very dominant build, and it refines the resustain from that build down a bit. But if it's ArenaNet's goal to attack the resustain of Blood Scourge, I would actually look at Blood Magic's trait, the Blood Bond, which is actually has a weird unintended effect on it at the moment, where when you hit someone with the bleed, it's acting as though you cast the full signet, and it's giving you like a big bulk heal. That's where most of the resustain is, and I don't even know whether that's wanted by ArenaNet in the game. So I would fix this. I would sort out what you think about Blood Bond and actually look at the way it's working in game, because I don't think it works the way that ArenaNet thinks it works. And the really good Blood Scourges, the Sage Scourges, they're all on this. So that's what I would look at, and then feel how you feel once the game is reflecting your design, and then maybe look at Sand Cascade. As far as World versus World is concerned, where you can get really epic AoE value out of this every time, maybe, yeah, this is a really worthwhile, nice change. I'd have to see. Lastly, they have Sand Flare, where they're also looking to reduce the barrier by 25%, but only in World versus World. So reading between the lines that this one's only targeted World versus World, it seems the devs do really care about the resustain that Necros are offering their Zergs. They want them to feel like in that squishier place, not be so role consolidated where they're really good supports and other things at the same time. But yeah, so Sand Flare anyway, it's the heal, gives you a big bulk of barrier. I really like this skill. I don't want to see this touched in PvP or PvE, I'll tell you that much. And so I'm really happy that the devs aren't looking to change it. There's nothing more fun than running over to someone and popping this and saving their life because you saw it and you basically healed them temporarily. I really like it. It's a very satisfying skill, and the barrier is the satisfying part of it. I think if they want to nerf Sand Flare, maybe reduce the selfless part of it. Sorry, I mean selfish. Though for World versus Worlds, I can understand that it's the big AoE value. The more AoE value you get out of this stuff, the more insane it is. So, you know, maybe that's a perfect nerf. Maybe that's really well directed. And, yeah, I'm on board with it. So for Ranger, they only have one change. It's to do with Longbow. We'll look at the change itself in a second, but it's the auto attack. Okay, it's a long range shot. And it's, you know, a flat packet of damage. You guys should all know how this looks. Whoops, I'm targeting my mini here. And the thing with this is that the further away you are, the more damage it does. We saw this was tweaked a little bit with the recent balance patch where they now scale this stuff a little bit more efficiently. You know, it used to say at X range do X damage, at Y range do B damage, at Z range do C damage. Now, you know, it just slides. But here's what they're proposing, and it's only World versus World, I think. Yeah. Reduce the damage range of this skill from 0.7 to 0.9 to instead being 0.65 to 0.75. So you notice, number one, they're actually diminishing the number, but they're also closing the range. So I don't agree with closing the range. I like the idea of having skills with specific even if it's an auto attack. I like the idea of, you know, you actually get to play into it, and the more you play into the mechanic, the more value you get. I don't think they should squeeze the range. But reducing the auto, I think, is okay. Now, one of the reasons I think they might be doing that is there's actually a fairly cheesy combo you can run. If you go Longbow GS as a Soul Beast, let's see how you can get GS. I'm pretty sure you can run a weird setup, right, where you sick 'em yourself. I can't because I don't have a target. You GS2, okay, while merge, so you get your attack of opportunity, so you get your big damage, and you, like, literally auto once, And you can crit for like 30k or something crazy if you're far enough away and you get the max value out of this. Because it's a, you know, if you actually look at each individual packet on all the other longbow strikes, this one's got the single largest one packet. So you roll enough damage modifiers and you do just this massive spike. It's very cheesy. And it's actually kind of harder to pull off than I think most people think, like in a regular way. But maybe the devs are looking at that. Maybe they're looking at the fact that, you know, Soul Beast is just OP in World vs. World. Let's be real. Epic mobility. Massive range that you can engage on people from. Stealth uptime if you want. It's, you know, plenty of cleanse, super speed, lots of modifiers, lots of personal boons. This class is nuts. So maybe they're just like, well, look, the auto attack pressure while you're really far away and people's only opportunity is to close this immense gap. Maybe we should rein that down. It's a 1500 range skill. And to all of that, I actually agree. I even think bring that over to PvP. Why World vs. World only? Well, mind you, in PvP, they did just have significant nerfs in terms of their projectile reflection and deflection. You know, they can't be unblockable so much anymore, so it's much harder for them. But there's something kind of baseline about massive gaps and big damage that I think is very scary, and I don't know, I wouldn't flinch to see it. But, you know, maybe World vs. World only is fine, where you can really stack the stats super high and with foods and stuff. Everywhere else, it's alright. Yeah, actually, I take it back. Definitely don't nerf it in PvP. I think Rangers had enough for now. Okay, so for Revenant, the first change they're going with is absolutely World vs. World oriented. It is based on hammer. So this is not a very offensive hammer. Hammer is a really weird weapon to me. Kind of unique in a way, in that hammer really isn't very viable and are interested in PvP or PvE. Almost anywhere. Not in fractals, really. Not in raids, really. Nowhere in PvP. But it's super dominant in World vs. World. So we're in a weird place with hammer, which is, okay, is that good for the weapon? You know, in which case, maybe we leave it. Maybe it's really nice that hammer is actually used somewhere in the game. Maybe we're scared of nerfing hammer. Because you nerf hammer for World vs. World applications, then where are we going to see hammer? Maybe that's your feeling. My feeling is somewhat, well, if you nerf it and what's really offensive about it and outlierish about it, maybe then you can actually buff it so suddenly it's in all 3 game modes instead of just 1. It's kind of what I'm thinking. But, you know, people use this in World vs. World because of the 2, right? Well, lots of reasons. But the 2 is very good because the way that the impacts come down and strike down, it's very easy to tag lots of players very far away. It's big, flat, spiky pressure, which means you can slam people down with considered spikes. Just works well across the kind of ranges and battlefields you find in World vs. World across lots of players, right? Same reason like Power Scourge is very good, because it's just, you know, manifest this out and you're just dumping damage, pulsing, heavy, hitting damage. And this thing can spike hard. You're kind of like a ranged glass nuke as a Revenant in World vs. World. I like the playstyle. I don't want to see the playstyle go away. I really think it's cool that Revenant has that. So, here's the devs' proposed nerf, though. I guess they just feel, you know, it's a dominant build, so they want to refine it in. Well, here's what they say. Coalescence of Ruin, the skill 2. This skill would no longer deal increased damage with successive impacts. Instead, it would deal increased damage equal to what was previously the middle impact damage. The damage would remain split between all the modes, and a red warning rectangle visible to enemies would be added to the skill. The way they phrase this is it's like, this is happening regardless of what you guys think. You know, you don't want to do art and animation work and then have to can it. So, I think that last sentence is really good. I like, because it feels cheesy to die to the Hammer 2s in World vs. World, right? That's kind of why it's strong, because World vs. World is in a really, like, hyper-strange place where, you know, you kind of have to go to cheesy stuff. The defense is so power-crept and the offense is so power-crept. That's kind of the way to make things run. Anyway, the idea of having a nice telegraph on there, I think that might be all you need, really. Let's just put the telegraph on, see how fun it feels to play against. And then if it feels too strong, go for it. But if there's like nice, interesting telegraphs for me to look, and I know that they're dangerous and I want to avoid them, then let's leave it there. I'm not sure that I agree with the damage nerf. Not until you give me other reasons to run hammer in other modes, and I'm not convinced you're just going to delete this weapon from the game. Then there's a weird change here. Now, this is to do with Herald. It's the skill Gaze of Darkness. I actually don't understand this, but again, the World vs. World side of things, stealth balance is very important. So, Gaze of Darkness is in Dragon Stance. Ugh, I just legend swapped. We're going to have to wait. It's in Dragon Stance, hidden underneath the Facet of Fury. So, sorry, is it? I think it's just called the Facet of Darkness. Sorry. So, it's this one here. We get Fury, but then we can pulse the Gaze out, all right? That's where the Dragon Eyes come out. And what that is there's a point-blank wave around you. What it will do is blind people, vuln them, reveal, and stun break for you. It's mostly powerful as far as PvP is concerned as a stun break and also reveal applicator while you're in the middle of an unrelenting assault or something. The vuln is a nice cherry on top. Very spammable. It's a skill that if you spam it too much, you kind of screw yourself out of Fury and Invocation Might uptime. But, you know, this is a fun skill. I like everything about this skill. I think the radius of 360 is very good. Yet, here's what the devs are saying, that the skill would reveal stealthed enemies up to 600 range away, in addition to then doing the other stuff still within 360. So they just want to up the reveal radius. I don't know. Is that because as a Revenant, it's just so annoying dealing with Deadeye and stuff at the moment? And now they want to up the radius? Maybe. Maybe, you know, they're looking at sneak gyro at the same time. Maybe they're having experiences where a herald is running into a sneak gyro, they're pulsing it, but they don't even reveal everyone because it's quite a tight radius. I don't think it does any harm to up the radius on the reveal, so maybe they go for the uptime on the reveal, and they just feel that, you know, stealth gameplay is so cheesy and so heavy. You got to remember as well, by the way, one thing with all the reveal discussion here is the Shadow Arts rework recently for Thief, which did actually add new stealth sources to the game, right, on heal skill, and kind of made stealth accessible and stealth gameplay possibly more oppressive. So they're looking to counter that by making reveal more oppressive, and thus you have this change. Again, I'm not sure how much harm it would do. I'm sure there's some like Thief mains out there who hate what I'm saying right now. But yeah, so I think it's okay, and it doesn't really affect anything else in a big way. I don't think it affects PvE in any way. I don't think it affects PvP in any way. So you can bring the change over. Why not? Lastly, we have Warrior, where the devs are being very much buff-oriented. It's not the first place we've seen them be buff-oriented. I like this idea, by the way, this general through line, this whole post. They're looking to counter dominant builds, not by nerfing the builds themselves so much as buffing counters. And so they're looking at Warrior, and they're looking at Warhorn. I might not even have a Warhorn on this character. Incredible. I don't think I do. Hold on. Let's equip one. Let's do this over. All right, so Warhorn, we've got one equipped. Let's remind ourselves of the skills here. First of all, you got Charge, which is give yourself swiftness to you and your allies while removing all movement impairing condies. So that's chill, cripple, and immob, like you'd expect. But also on this skill, they have Torment, which is take more damage while moving. Maybe you can understand that. But then even Burning. For some reason, Burning is on this list, okay? Burning is not an inhibiting condition, but there you have it. Then you have Call to Arms, which is give yourself Vigor and your allies, but then remove all the other conditions in the game. So Weakness, and I think the only stuff that's not on here is like Fear, right? Maybe there's something else. Maybe you can look at that. Do we consider Taunt a condition? I'm still not totally settled on that. People always argue there. But this one's also a blast and unblockable. So Warhorn's nice, but it also feels a bit out of touch in that there's so much that you get out of certain offhands in the game now. So much. It's kind of hard to justify. But in Wild vs. Wild, where you can guarantee max AoE value all the time, well, we'll see, you know. It's not like Vigor or definitely not Swiftness are in super short supply anymore. Here you have it. So Charge. The skill would only remove movement impairing conditions and then increase the damage of affected allies next to attack by 25% in addition to its previous effects. Also, the swiftness would be 50% longer and it would become a blast finisher. So, this is crazy. There's lots of angles. First of all, making it a blast finisher, I think is a great idea. For any game mode, it's a great idea. Because, especially when you think about being in a water field, you now get double blast finisher on your Warhorn. I really like that. So, bam, AoE water heal. Bam, AoE water heal. Or, you know, plenty of might for people. That sounds fun to me. Anywhere I take that. Even in, like, certain PvE areas, I'm well on board for double blast finisher on the Warhorn. That gives it an identity too. So that's very fun. The 25% increased damage on your allies next to attacks, I'm not so sure about. There's certain interactions in the game already like that, like Elementalist having arcane power, where you can guarantee your allies' next couple of attacks are crits, and then they give ferocity and stuff. And just the AoE elements to that, I'm not sure about. I'm not sure that really that goes far enough. That said, this is on 600 radius. The thing is, the game is just, there's so many mini packets of damage people are always throwing around. It's not like you can be really surgical with that big 25% buff. Though I say that, let's look back at Hammer on Rev. They're talking about nerfing down and finding a middle ground for the Rev Hammer stuff. Then this Charge, alright, let's just imagine we've just popped Charge on a bunch of Hammer Revs, and now that we tell them all to use their skill too, right? That's not actually that hard to line up. And you would look at some insane spikes. Do we like that? I think I like that. That's some synergy. That's some interesting kind of world versus world gameplay. I don't know what that really does in terms of removing that as an aggressive build, but basically you've got a dominant build right now that would benefit massively from your proposed buff to charge. So I like the gameplay interaction that comes out of it, but is it now also running counter to the principle behind the change, you know, this balance patch in the first place? Maybe you guys have your own thoughts on that. As for PvP, I don't know how comfortably you could do that. There's definitely a certain sense of being with a thief or something, though. He drops a smoke field, you've now double blasted, you're both stealth, you've given him a 25% open on his backstab or his death judgment. You know, that could be kind of fun. And you might see some Warhorn stuff. It's very hard to think of, like, paired off combos like that as far as PvP is concerned, though. So I don't think, you know, Warhorn is definitely not better than Shield. And it's extremely difficult to get rid of Greatsword. So I'm not sure you'd see Warhorn based on this here. Next, they do also have Call to Arms, the skill 5. It says that it would now remove 3 conditions from affected allies instead of specific ones and grant barrier. Well, we don't know how much barrier that would be. Barrier coming to Warrior, I think is a bit messy flavor-wise. Not sure how I really feel about that. I get that you're looking for something extra. I would rather that they throw protection out, maybe. The AoE protection there on Warrior also has its own level of weirdness. I don't know whether I agree with either of those. I think Warhorn needs to go a bit further. I love, by the way, that ArenaNet are looking at Warhorn. Warhorn is definitely one of those weapons where it's like, let's tune this bad boy up. Let's look at some stuff here. So I'm not sure. Then they're also looking at the trait, by the way, the Warhorn trait, quick breathing. We're going to skip to the bottom here for a second. So they're thinking of reworking it a bit to pair with the Warhorn skill changes so they feel more cohesive. It would continue to increase number of targets from 5 to 10, and it would cause Warhorn skills to grant an additional boon instead of reducing the cooldown. So they're thinking of putting Fury on charge and Resistance on Call Arm, and grants 120 concentration. So if you trait getting Resistance and Call to Arms, now we're cooking, alright? Now we have AoE resist and barrier and a blast on one skill. That becomes a very supportive skill. The problem is you're kind of looking at Warhorn becoming this big support kit. But Shout Heals is really one of the only other areas of Warrior that complements that playstyle. Banners, I guess, to a degree. And it's just not enough. You know, even with this turbocharged supporty Warhorn on 10 targets, you're not going to find a Warrior that can justifiably, you know, do all that. Maybe you're, as far as PvP is concerned, maybe you're giving rise to a PvP, like, Warrior team fight build. But, you know, what are the best, like, DPS team fight? I don't know. It's like you're looking at Berserker, but putting Warhorn Berserker in the middle there with shout heals and stuff. This just feels insane to me. Like, there's no really workable avenue. I think that the place of Warrior is hyper-refined at the moment. And even with these big buffs, I'm not sure you'd see much change. For World versus World, where, you know, it's so imbalanced and there's so many players that you can get away with a ton of random stuff, maybe having random Warhorn warriors out there, pulsing 10 target resist, 10 target barrier, double blasts, that sounds crazy, actually. I think you would start to see Warhorn warriors, right, running around. But you've also just bumped a ton more resist into the game. So if you've accomplished your aim there, what are you doing? You're trading away some of the reliance on scrappers and firebrands for anti-Condi, and you're instead shifting that onto Warrior. So a part of the Warrior identity is to bring that anti-Condi in there, right? I'd have to see how much resist there is, but that's essentially what you do. You trade away some of the reliance on some of these classes for anti-Condi, and you lean more on Warrior there. So yeah, that's what I think here. The 120 concentration would be kind of nice. That's what you have. So also, Fury on charge has a nice thematic link, so I think it's fine. Though Fury's in no short supply anywhere in the game, so I don't think it actually means much. Oh, and the change we skipped, Sight Beyond Sight with a Hider Radius. It's kind of the same arguments as Gaze of Darkness we talked about with Rev for a second ago, so I'd say sure, why not? It's like the least used Spellbreaker utility anyway, right? So buffing it sounds fine to me. With all this focus on reveal counterplay, I'd like to see the effect reveal itself have some kind of physical animation on application as well. Because it feels really clunky to be heavy stealth oriented in World versus World at the moment. Like, reveal is super frustrating, but if it's better telegraphed when you get hit with it, maybe it's more fun. So there you go. That's my thoughts, guys. And, you know, there's a lot. Hopefully you're inspired based on my conversation here. as to what you think, especially some of you big world versus worlders out there. So leave your comments in my video. Let's see it. Let's get a discussion going. And also, don't be scared. Look in the description of this video. Post your comments immediately on the forum thread itself. You know, if you think I said something really hideous and you don't want the devs being led astray, now's the time to speak up. There you have it, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Good stuff to ArenaNet for creating a dialogue with the community about balance changes before they come in. It's exciting, and this is the way I like to see ArenaNet operate. Until the next one, guys, take it easy.